So guys, there have been a lot of reactions as to why the 27 lawmakers who are loyal to Wike decided to, avoid Governor Fubara. Like we all saw yesterday, Governor Fubara went to the assembly complex only to see that everywhere was on a lockdown. They just tried to avoid him, and that has raised a lot of questions. I mean, people are asking some questions about if these people are really out for the peace of the people of Rivers, or they are just desperate to look for a way to impeach Fubara. We know that the speculations have always been there that Fubara will be impeached, and Wike himself came out to say heavens will not fall if Fubara is impeached. Now, the question remains, why did they avoid Fubara yesterday when he arrived the assembly complex? I want you to take your time and listen to what this Rivers politician has got to say, and he has called it a declaration of war, and it will cause people to bleed because Fubara himself has a very large followership. You can imagine if they all should take to the street, there will be a whole lot of bloodbath, and that is what people are trying to avoid. Anyway, take your time and listen to what this man has got to say. Take a look.
Let's take what the governor says. If the governor says that I called, I wrote, and they knew I was coming, it's then the place of the legislature to put him on the order of the day. It's not the governor that will put his name on the order of the day. So someone did not do it. Now let's just assume, for the sake of assumptions, that a clerk, somebody forgot to do that, and the governor shows up. By virtue of who he is, his office, that gate should have been opened. So this was deliberate, and this was a statement. It was no one was playing games here. They were saying, you're not welcome here, you're not the governor, you will obey the rules according to how we set it, not how anyone else sets it.
Yes, I'm inclined to agree to some extent with your assessment, because I mean, we had this reporter who was inside the building, the complex, when it happened, and he said that the security people and some of the assemblymen had actually come to tell them at least 15 minutes or 20 minutes before the governor arrived. They were clearly aware that he was arriving, and that they had come to tell them to say, we're going to lock the gates. And so they proceeded to lock the gates. So the problem here that makes the situation appear intractable is that the assembly members don't seem to want to reconcile. I mean, they seem to want to fight and to defeat the governor rather than reconcile the situation, which a lot of people thought was, what everybody was aiming towards, that they'd fixed the situation. Supreme Court makes a decision, the governor says, okay, we'll obey the Supreme Court order, let's now, proceed. And these guys don't want to do that. I mean, is that the impression that you're getting?
So the governor he does not have a choice. He has to obey and that's the way it should be. But one of the things that we see is that there has always been somehow in Nigeria this ability to choose which laws to obey, which ones not to obey, which court judgment to obey, and which one not to obey. And I think we are seeing that at play here. There are certain cases that have been made within Rivers State that have been totally ignored, and others which have to be obeyed. In this particular case, the governor has done the right thing by obeying it. Now, having obeyed it, the other side now has to do the honorable thing of allowing him, you've caned him, you've deflated him, you've won your case in court. It's time to allow the man to breathe.
I mean, do you think that, and I know this is, purely conjecture, but do you think that if you had won the governorship election, that this whole thing would not have been the way that it is?
Absolutely different. Yeah.
For the simple reason that you had no godfather leanings with Mr. Wike, or would he have, as some people have said, I mean, some have alleged that he has this overbearing character, and he kind of believes that the state belongs to him, and therefore that he would have been perhaps not as interventionist, but certainly to some extent meddlesome in your affairs.
No, I don't think so. I think it would have been a very different dynamics. I think why the dynamics is so poisonous in this particular case is that the Honorable Minister Wike believes, and rightly so, that he paid for everything, he did everything, he did all the campaigning, he single-handedly selected, and he said this. I'm not saying anything he hasn't said. And he did all
that's
of
a fact.
this. It's a fact. So he said that, he's made it a fact. And as a result of that, then the determination as to how the state will be run is his. Had I won, that would not have
And that was the agreement.
let's assume it's the agreement.
I mean, I because that appears to be what this whole thing is about.
Exactly. And so Sim goes around, His Excellency goes around, and for whatever reason, that agreement is broken. And since the day that agreement is broken, there has been no peace in Rivers State at all. In my case, it would have been totally different, because in the first instance, there would have been no agreement of that sort there. And in which case, we'll be sitting down opposite each other and discussing. Now, my belief 100% is that everyone who, one way or another, has attained a position of governor, regardless of how they got there, right, deserves a place at the table to discuss the development of Rivers State. And so Wike would have had a place to sit at the table in the development of Rivers State if I was there. That's one thing I believe. There's no one who attains a position of that level that has zero to add to the state.
Indeed.
So everybody has something to add. One of the challenges we have in Rivers State today is that everybody who becomes governor wants to cut off everybody else who has ever been near there. They destroy their projects, destroy their heritage, break everything down so that it's only about me. And I think that's very wrong, and that's what we're saying. So I would have been a totally different governor. Wike would have had a place. Sim would, Wike, Odili, Amechi, Ada George, everyone who has attained that position will sit down to discuss how do we develop this state. Because Rivers State must be developed. We've been taken back. Charles, at the end of this crisis, whenever it ends, right, we would have gone back, we would have lost at least 30 years of development, at the very least, by the end of this. How do we make that up?
Yeah, it's very disheartening, isn't it? But I would imagine that given that you are now a politician, that this, to some extent, might be the impetus for you to give it another go in 2027.
So I've always said that I'm not going anywhere. I'm in politics. And as the opportunities open up for me, I'm there to run. So I'm not shying away from any opportunity that politics brings. However, what we see on the table today is that we have a governor and he's fighting for his life. Where that ends up, I have no idea. Is he going to be impeached? That seems to be the way it's going. Can he negotiate himself out of an impeachment? It's very possible. Could the president step in and decide that, you know what, leave him to stay there for his time and let him try his luck in 2027? Many things can happen. One of the things that I've learned in politics is that a day is a long time. Anything can happen within a day.
But are there things that, I mean, to be entirely fair and sort of down the middle, are there things that the governor is doing that perhaps are getting in the way of fixing this problem? Because Nyesom Wike held a media chat today, and one of the things he talked about was the fact that if you are in a political position, such as the governor is, that you must be a master of compromise, and therefore that the governor could approach members of the assembly without sort of cameras and things all over the place. For example, when they sent him a letter giving her an ultimatum to come and deliver the budget, he could have just said to them, I mean, approached them and said, look, it just won't be possible in the next 24 hours or 48 hours. Can we do it on this date? And kind of humanize the process. Is that something that you think that he's kind of been forced with his back against the wall? It's
a good point that the Honorable Minister has made there. Politics is all about compromise.
Indeed.
And sitting down and working something out. So on that, I would agree with him that option, if that option is on the table, can be exploited, should have been explored. If it wasn't explored, then it's a mistake and should be explored. However, the question is that, did he try to exploit and was he pushed back? I don't know.
Yeah.
I hear the minister say that he should do this. I agree. The question is, because Sim did say, the governor did say that he called to inform the speaker that he was going to come.
Yeah, but what you do is nothing. How you do it is everything.
I agree.
And that really is key.
I agree.
But I mean, the other issue here, and I think somebody raised this previously, is that there does seem to be an issue, and I suppose it's just on the face of it, but it's become a talking point. There seems to be an issue with correspondence in Rivers. I mean, the Assembly writes to the governor to say, we're giving you an ultimatum to present the budget, but the governor says he didn't get it. Then the governor writes to the Assembly, inviting them to a meeting, and the Assembly says they didn't get it, and subsequently, oh, well, he didn't sign it. Some said they didn't get it, others said he didn't sign it. Then the governor turns up today saying he wrote to them, telling them he's coming, but they said they didn't get his letter. I mean, somebody mentioned this point. They said, are all the addresses of both the State House, and the Assembly all mixed up in River State? I mean, what is this a deliberate attempt?
Charles, it's very deliberate.
To slight a political opponent, basically.
So, I mean, it goes without saying, right, that everybody knows everybody. And if I wanted to get a letter across to you, I would know how to get it to you, who to get it to, and all of that. So when things like this happen, it's very deliberate. So you are seeing very, very deliberate steps to demean, to demote, to disgrace, and just to make sure a process does not work. And I think at some point, this has to stop. If you ask me, the two warring parties, it's not those around Sim, it's not those around Wike. The two warring parties at the end of the day is His Excellency Sim Fubara and His Excellency Nyesom Wike. You ask me, pick up the phone, call each other, and figure out how does this work. Something broke. Something has to be repaired. But if the people of Rivers State are going to benefit anything at all, then those two have to reconcile.
I noticed that President Tinubu appeared to have intervened again, but seems to have spared his minister, Nyesom Wike, any chastisement or blame in this crisis, but apparently reserved all the focus for Governor Fubara. In a political crisis such as this, I mean, he's from your party, the APC. Did that come across as fair to you?
I would always say that in this kind of scenario, both parties have to give up something, okay? And where it seems as if it's only one-sided, then you will find the kind of scenario that we have where the one party will feel that I'm not giving up anything. Why am I the one to compromise? And another one is saying, no, give up everything first and let's speak. My take is that the president has taken a step to reconcile, or at least to bring an end to this, which is what we have been saying from day one, that if there's anyone at all who can bring this to an end, is the president. However, the president needs to say to both parties, you're going to give up something.
Yeah, but you would have thought, sorry to interrupt you, that a crisis where it seems very clear, because you yourself have seen the clarity of it. I mean, a crisis where a past governor is trying to continue to exert enormous, almost absolute influence on Rivers State, and is essentially trying to use the executive governor as merely a proxy in that regard. You would have thought that the president would say, well, you can't do this. I mean, I don't know what he says to them behind the scenes, but he certainly is not saying that in public. So, and he's a defender of democracy.
True, he is a defender of democracy, and I don't know whether he has decided that Rivers State must be solved by Rivers State, but I don't think that Rivers State can be solved by Rivers State. If I were to give a suggestion, then it would be this, right? Sim Fubara has about 1.5 years left, right, to run any kind of governance. The people of Rivers State desperately need a government. Allow him stay, right? Set out the conditions for which he will stay. Maybe keep some commissioners. There has to be some give and take. He cannot be put in a situation where he's a lame duck governor from now, and all he does is sign a document, nothing will move. It's just a mess. And of course, what you would see is that the entire jaws and all of that, if he decides that there is going to be impeached, will be a problem. So we cannot go down the impeachment line, and at the same time, you cannot go down the lame duck line.
Right.
So something has to be done. And I think this is where the president needs to then step in and say, okay, look, the only way out of this crisis is that we're going to get to 2027. When we get to 2027, this is what we're going to do, whatever it is we're going to do. However, between now and then, Rivers State has to be governed like this. You have this, you have that. Just
right. I mean, there is a school of thought that rather suggests that all this, from the president's point of view, has to do with 2027, that he feels, and I can't obviously predict what he thinks, but this is what is making the rounds, that he rather feels that Minister Nyesom Wike has a handle on the situation in terms of voting capacity in Rivers State, and that he needs to have that state delivered to him in 2027, which is why he's essentially allowing this kind of, in the minds of some people, excess to continue.
I think that would be a miscalculation, and I don't think that that's true. But I think that would be a miscalculation. It's very difficult for anybody to predict the dynamics of how a state would be. Okay, and there are other political actors that are within that state that would either go for or against you. So it's not that easy. And I know, I've run election twice in Rivers State, and I know that at each time, the point where the election was changed was not at the ground level. So there's always a place where elections may swing away from you, and I'm using these words very carefully. But
yeah.
So there's a place where
you could tell a few stories there.
So
right?
There's a place where that inflection can happen, and it depends on who is in control at that point.
Yeah, but that's the point. He seems to think that Nyesom Wike is the one who pulls that straight.
That's what I'm saying. It's not that easy.
But is it your sense that Minister Wike has, for now, got the upper hand in this crisis? With the apparent support of President Tinubu, he's essentially now won this fight, or at least this round of the fight.
So better rounds. So the politics, Rivers State politics, it's a table tennis game, ping pong. Okay, so every time there's a particular round, on this particular round, what did the Supreme Court say? The Supreme Court says that go back to status quo, allow them to stay up until the point where they're determined if they're still members of APC or not. So for now, that's a round. I have no idea what the court will say as to whether they're still members, are they still, that's another determination to come. And so we have a round now that has swung towards Wike's side. And I believe at this point in time, they need to come back and say, okay, you know what? Let us now figure out how we're going to work this. But if we're going to go down this line of take everything and fight everything, then you get opposition. Somebody will oppose you.
And of course, as we mentioned at the intro, Minister Wike made what some see as a rather inflammatory statement today to the effect that heaven won't fall if the Assembly decide to impeach the governor, and that threats of violence from the Jaw people and so on and so forth should be ignored, because they don't have a monopoly on violence. Is that adding fuel to the fire?
I think it is. So heaven has never fallen. Heaven doesn't fall. Heaven stays where it is. So that
unless you're chicken licking.
Yeah. So heaven
the sky fell on chicken licking's head.
So heaven has never fallen. But believe me, trouble has a way of being brewed and being stirred. And I don't think we want to test the waters. We don't want to test the resolve of whether people can come to violence. So let's take what he says. You don't have a monopoly of violence as an Ijaw person. So, agreed. You don't have a monopoly of violence. So what does that mean? That violence will meet violence. So there will be a war in Rivers State where the Ijaws are fighting and I don't know who Ikweres are fighting. So we want to have a civil war in Rivers State, and that's the way out. Does that make sense? So Ijaws say that don't impeach. If you impeach, will come out and will battle you. We say, no problem, we are going to impeach. When you come out, we are also coming out, and there will be blood on the street. Who is dying?
Yeah.
Rivers men and Rivers women, Rivers children on Rivers soil. No sensible government fights a war in their own land. They carry it outside. They take it out. At the end of the day, the devastation is yours. When Russia was fighting, they didn't fight in Russia, they went to Ukraine. When they're fighting in Gaza, they're going out. Everybody leaves their own territory, peace, and they go out. And we are sitting down in Rivers State and saying, you know what? Bring it on. It just come out and fight. We Ikweres will come out and we'll fight. And we'll kill each other on the ground in Rivers State, and it's okay. I'm okay with that. I am not okay with it.
And on that sensible note, I want to thank you very much indeed for coming in. Tonya Cole is the APC governorship candidate in the 2023 election. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Charles.
Keep climbing the mountains. Although I'm not quite sure if you're going to climb the one in Rivers still.
So guys, you can see what is happening in Rivers State. Honestly, these people are ready to set everywhere ablaze, and you can just imagine what the people of Rivers are going through, because as it stands now, Fubara cannot concentrate, cannot even know what leadership is all about, cannot provide the people with governance, cannot give them basic dividends of democracy, because these people are on him. They are on him. This man is restless. This man is tense. This man, he has gone through a lot. And, it was surprising to Nigerians to see that the Supreme Court could say that these people did not defect. It's still surprising. I say people accepted that judgment because, when Supreme Court declares it's final. And you could see how Wike has been reacting since after that judgment. That tells you that, see, something went on behind the scene. They've not told Nigerians what actually happened. But guess what? That's the way in this country. That's just what happens in this country when it comes to the judiciary. You can never trust the Nigerian judiciary, and that's why people are worried about the future of this country, because we don't tend to have a very strong judiciary. Our judges are not independent. Our judges cannot say their mind. They cannot rule based on the rule of law. They cannot say things from the perspective they are seeing it. Rather, their judgments are usually influenced, and that is why it's still like a shock to many Nigerians as to how did we get here, that people we saw defected, people that are said to have signed affidavit, people who read their resignation letter on the house, are said to have not defected. They should rather be brought back again and be recognized as the legitimate governor. It's heartbreaking, but nevertheless, Fubara has equally accepted that ruling, that he's going to do whatever they said in that judgment. But see how these people are frustrating Fubara. Invited them, they refused to come. He went to the house, they locked the door against him, and Fubara, despite the fact that Fubara has started implementing the rulings, part of the ruling in the judgment, still they are not satisfied. They are just looking for a way to frustrate Fubara beyond repair. That's just what you are seeing, because we know that, see, Nigerians, this is a very big lesson to every Nigerian. You cannot just depend on the judiciary. I mean, the judiciary has become something else. The law this time chooses how it applies to different individuals. If you're a person of influence, if you are this, if you are that, you know how the law is going to work for you. But if you are just an ordinary Nigerian, the real wrath of the law will come on you. And that's why people are worried about what is happening and how, this judgment came that have thrown Rivers State into further turmoil. Anyway, guys, I don't know what you think about all this happening in Rivers State, and you can see the man is saying that Fubara cannot be impeached, but Rufai is asking it, but from all indications, Rufai is saying he likes to be brutally honest, that from all indications, the Wike's pro-lawmakers are ready to impeach Fubara. What if that happens? And you've heard all what this elder statesman from Rivers State has said. But it's really so sad that we are here as a country. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell. Please give this video a like so that YouTube can recommend it to others. And drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you. So, guys, you can see what